Now that the Democratic convention is happening, earlier this week, we talked about Kamala Harris's new plans when it comes to housing, but now we have some information on her tax plans. So let's jump into it. This is your week in money. No surprise, Kamala Harris, vice president of current President Joe Biden, her tax plan is pretty much aligning closely with his proposals, which is including significant changes to capital gains and unrealized gain taxes, which is the big one, and that's what we're talking about in this episode. That's particularly targeting the ultra wealthy. Here are some key details. When it comes to capital gains tax increases, Harris supports raising the capital gains tax rate for those earning over $1 million a year to match the ordinary income rates, and also potentially increasing the top rate to as high as 44.6%. This move aims to reduce the preferential treatment of investment income compared to wage income. For what it's worth, a lot of that invested income has already been taxed before as regular income. Now we're talking about taxing it again. After you invest it, it grows and then you sell it. So, it's a double tax, and I guess we want to raise that double tax to be compared to the first tax. And then there's the one that's been talked about all over social media this week, and that's taxed on unrealized gains. Kamala endorses a 25% minimum tax on the unrealized gains of billionaires and centimillionaires, which is those with a net worth exceeding $100 million. Unrealized gains are increases in the value of investments that have not been sold yet. And traditionally, these gains are not taxed until they are realized through a sale, but this proposal would tax them annually. And then there's the wealth tax. The plan includes a broader wealth tax targeting the ultra rich, aiming to raise significant revenue by applying taxes to accumulated wealth that has not yet been converted into income. This proposal is projected to generate $500 billion over 10 years, contributing to funding various social programs. What are the impacts and criticisms? Now, while the tax plan aims to address income inequality and increase government revenue, it has been met with criticism. Opponents argue that taxing unrealized gains could face legal challenges, for one, also disrupt investment markets, and also disincentivize long-term investing. Of course, you're thinking, this doesn't impact me, right? Because I don't have over $100 million in wealth. Well, if it is discouraging investments, that is often impacting the overall stock market. And where do you think your 401k is invested? You're right. You're not going to receive these wealth taxes. The average American won't. I won't. But guess what? I like buying into the S&P 500. I like having my 10% average annual return, up years and down years combined. But the vast majority of the movement in the stock market are coming from these large corporations, are coming from these ultra wealthy individuals. And if they no longer feel comfortable to invest in the marketplace like they do now, what? I'm going to see my retirement get cut in half on its average returns potentially? Don't think that this doesn't impact you just because it is taxes on the ultra wealthy. And additionally, there are concerns about the feasibility and economic impact of implementing such a tax. But this tax initiative does underscore Kamala Harris's commitment to progressive taxation, which is focusing on ensuring that the wealthiest Americans contribute more significantly to federal revenues. So let's talk about potential consequences, and then let's also address the arguments for these taxes. But first, potential consequences. Obviously, market volatility and asset liquidation. High net worth individuals might be forced to sell assets prematurely to generate liquidity for paying these taxes, which could lead to increased market volatility, where your 401k is. And these large-scale sales could depress asset prices, affecting the broader market and other investors like you and your 401k. And then there's the disincentive to investment. This tax could, and I'm going to use the word could because all of this is kind of hypothetical right now, discourage long-term investments in illiquid assets like real estate, startups, or other capital-intensive projects. Investors may prefer more liquid assets that can be easily sold to pay these new taxes, which could lead to reduced capital availability for economic growth and innovation. Then there's the complexity and administrative challenges. The IRS would face significant challenges in assessing the value value of illiquid and difficult to value assets annually. This could lead to costly disputes and a substantial increase in administrative burdens, both for taxpayers and the government. The proposal will obviously face legal challenges if passed by Congress and signed by the president. And this is because taxing unrealized gains could be considered unconstitutional. The US tax system has historically only taxed realized income, and a shift to taxing unrealized gains could be seen as exceeding Congress's taxing authority under the 16th Amendment, and then of course the fear of distortion of investment decisions. Let's be real world about this. Investors will probably engage in tax avoidance strategies or move their assets into tax havens to escape the tax. This could distort economic decisions and lead to inefficient allocation of resources, ultimately harming economic growth, which not only hurts your 401k in that situation, but could also hurt your job. And then there's the impact on entrepreneurship and wealth creation in this country. By taxing unrealized gains, the policy could penalize entrepreneurs whose wealth is tied up in a business that have not been realized profits just yet. This could stifle entrepreneurship and discourage the kind of risk-taking that drives innovation and job creation in this country. These potential negative consequences suggest that while the policy aims to address wealth inequality, which honestly is not a bad intention, it could inadvertently harm economic growth, market stability, and long-term investments, which in general will actually hurt wealth inequality and those at the bottom even more. But there are arguments for these new taxes, and we just talked about the potential consequences, so it's only fair to talk about the arguments for them. 1. Revenue generation. This new tax could generate substantial revenue for the federal government, which could be used to fund public services, reduce the national deficit, probably not, or invest in infrastructure, healthcare, and education. The reason I say probably not is because usually when we increase tax revenue, we usually just increase spending instead of actually fixing the deficit. Given that unrealized gains are a significant portion of the wealth held by the ultra-rich in this country, tapping into this resource could raise hundreds of billions of dollars over time. And then there's addressing wealth inequality, which again, addressing that as a subject in general is not an inherently bad thing, it's how we go about it. But wealth inequality in the United States is at a historically high level, with a small percentage of the population holding a disproportionate amount of wealth. But by taxing unrealized gains, the policy aims to redistribute wealth more fairly and reduce the wealth gap, ensuring that the ultra-wealthy contribute a fairer share of the wealth society. But there's also the conversation around closing tax loopholes. Currently, the ultra-wealthy can accumulate vast amounts of wealth without paying taxes on it until they sell their assets. By taxing unrealized gains, this policy would close a major tax loophole, ensuring that billionaires and centimillionaires cannot indefinitely defer taxes on their wealth. This could create a more level playing field between different types of income. And then there's economic efficiency. Proponents argue that taxing unrealized gains could reduce speculative investments and short-term trading by encouraging longer-term investment strategies. By targeting wealth that grows without being taxed, this policy could discourage the hoarding of assets purely for capital appreciation and encourage more productive uses of capital. And then there's reducing tax avoidance, as the tax would make it harder for the ultra-wealthy to use financial engineering to avoid taxes. By taking wealth as it accrues rather than only when it's realized, the policy could prevent the accumulation of untaxed wealth through strategies like borrowing against assets or transferring wealth to heirs with minimal tax liability. So in general, supporters of a 25% tax on unrealized gains for the ultra-wealthy believe it would address structural inequalities in the tax system, generate significant revenue, and help reduce wealth concentration at the top of the economic ladder. Let's talk about the current statistics around taxes in the United States. Here's the provable reality when it comes to paying taxes in the United States. The top 1% of earners, or those making over $682,577 a year and above, the total income taxes that they pay in the United States is 45.8% of the total share. They pay nearly half of all federal income taxes, despite representing only 26.3% of total adjusted gross income in the United States. And then there's the top 10% of earners who make over $169,800 a year, and they pay a total of 75.8% of total income taxes in the United States. And this just further illustrates the more progressive nature of our tax system. And then the top 25% of earners in the United States, are over $94,440 a year, pay almost 90% of all income taxes paid in this country. And the top 50% of earners pay 97.7% of all income taxes. So when it comes to our progressive tax system, the bottom 50% of earners in this country actually only pay 2.3% of all federal income taxes. And that is people making less than $46,637 a year. Obviously, people making that amount of money have less money to spend on things like needs. And obviously, people in the 1% have a lot more money to spend on things like wants. The argument is honestly kind of simple and easy to understand when it comes to taking more from one person based on their situation and less from another person. Someone making less than $30,000 a year, if you take 20% of their income, they might have to choose between 2 meals or 3. But if you're taking 20% from someone who's making $30 million a year, that 20% then determines whether or not they can afford 2 Ferraris that day or 3. So obviously they are on very different scales. But it is very clear that this new tax is only targeting the top 1%, and the top 1% already pays 50% of the taxes in this country. You know, if we're ignoring the impact on the economy, which would affect your job, or the impact on the stock market, which would impact your 401k and different retirements, let's just ignore those for a second. They have more money, they can pay more taxes. It honestly just makes sense. It's not going to impact me. Let's talk about the history of taxes in the United States to put this into context and then show what this type of tax could actually look like in the future when it comes to impacting you. Until the Civil War, the vast majority of tax income for the United States came from import taxes. The first federal income tax was introduced during the Civil War under the Revenue Act of 1861 to help fund war expenses. The federal government imposed a 3% tax on incomes over $800. The tax system was then revised under the Revenue Act of 1862, introducing a gradual tax with rates ranging from 3% to 5%. Eventually, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, the precursor to the IRS, was also then established. But the income tax was repealed after the Civil War debts were paid. Then comes 1913, where the 16th Amendment was ratified, and that granted Congress the power to levy income taxes without apportionment among the states. This led to the modern federal income tax system. And then that Revenue Act of 1913 reintroduced the income tax with rates ranging from 1% on incomes over $3,000 to 7% on incomes over $500,000. So again, you're probably already starting to see the pattern. Income tax was introduced for only the people at the top, and then we started to see it trickle down to people in the middle. And then during the Great Depression and the New Deal, tax rates were raised again to fund government programs, as the top tax rate reached 79% in 1936. And then came the Revenue Act of 1942, which greatly expanded the number of Americans subject to income tax, transforming it into a mass tax. The top income tax rate peaked at 94% during World War II, but since then it has been lowered to 37% top income tax rate today. The picture is clear. Taxes start as just a small drop in the bucket, but always expand, and pulling them back to pre-tax introduction levels is nearly impossible. But obviously, unrealized gains, capital gains taxes is different than income taxes. Let's continue to put it in perspective and look at capital gains taxes today and the impact on the overall economy. And this is just based on tax research, not a political right or political left. I want to be as objective as possible at all times. So what are capital gains taxes? Capital gains taxes are taxes levied on the profit realized from the sale of an asset that has appreciated in value. When an individual sells an asset such as a stock, bond, real estate, or a business for more than its purchase price, the difference between the selling price and the original cost is considered a capital gain and is subject to taxation. So what are the impacts of these capital gains taxes? There's distortion of financial decisions. The structure of these capital gains taxes can distort the financial decisions that individuals make, encouraging investors to time the sale of assets to minimize taxes, or use strategies like tax loss harvesting, where losses are realized to offset gains. These behaviors can create inefficiencies in the overall marketplace. As a full-time creator, I can tell you creating engaging videos takes a lot of time and effort. From scripting to editing, the whole process can be a headache. But that's where InVideo AI comes in. With InVideo AI, you're in the director's seat while the AI acts as your co-pilot, taking care of all the heavy lifting. InVideo AI is the world's most used AI video creator with over 10 million users in more than 150 countries. It's the only tool I found that lets you control every aspect of your video using simple text prompts. So here's how it works. To start, You enter in a detailed prompt. For example, create a video guide explaining how to invest in real estate. InVideo AI will generate a rough draft based on your input.
If you don't like the stock market but still want to grow your money, then real estate might be your new best friend. First things first, understand your budget. Know how much you can invest without breaking the bank.
If you need to make changes, it's as easy as typing. You can add subtitles, change the voiceover, or even modify the intro with just a few text commands. Want to change the language to French? Done.
Si la bourse ne vous attire pas, mais que vous souhaitez tout de même faire fructifier votre argent, l'immobilier pourrait bien être votre nouveau meilleur ami. Tout d'abord, il est essentiel de bien comprendre votre budget. Déterminez combien vous pouvez investir sans mettre vos finances à péril.
Need better footage for a scene? Done. It's that simple. And here's the game changer. InVideo AI can clone your voice. Imagine creating videos in your own voice without having to record anything. This feature alone saves you time and money, making video creation more accessible and efficient. Once you're happy with your video, you can export it without watermarks and with access to high-quality stock footage. This comprehensive tool replaces the need for multiple apps, saving you hundreds of dollars each month. So if you're serious about upping your video game, try InVideo AI. Plans start at just $20 a month, and you'll get access to millions of royalty-free stock footage clips, voice cloning, and more. Scan the QR code on the screen or check out the link in the description and use my code YourWeekInMoney50 to get 2 times the number of video generation credits in your first month. And then, like we talked about before, there are impacts on entrepreneurship and innovation. Entrepreneurs and investors in startups often rely on capital gains from the sale of equity stakes. Higher capital gains taxes may discourage investments in high-risk, high-reward ventures, which are crucial for innovation and economic dynamism. Just like the new tax we're talking about, there is the effect on wealth inequality, as some argue that increasing the capital gains tax could reduce wealth inequality by ensuring that high-income individuals who disproportionately benefit from the capital gains taxes pay a larger share of their income in taxes. However, critics note that this could also reduce incentives for wealth creation and long-term investments, again hurting your 401k and your job. But there are different treatments for short-term capital gains and long-term capital gains, as the United States tax policy currently taxes long-term capital gains at a lower rate than short-term gains. This differential is designed to encourage long-term investing, but it also creates complexity and opportunities for tax avoidance. Policy changes that reduce this differential could simplify the tax code, but may also reduce incentives for long-term holdings. And then, of course, we are a country, we are a society, so there is competition on the international scale. High capital gains taxes may reduce the attractiveness of the United States as an investment destination. In a globalized economy, capital is mobile, and investors may prefer jurisdictions with more favorable tax treatment, potentially leading to a capital flight. So in general, the impact of capital gains taxes is multifactored, influencing investment behavior, economic growth, and tax revenue. While increasing these taxes may address concerns about wealth inequality, it also carries risk, such as reduced investment in the United States, market inefficiencies, and potential decreases in overall tax revenue due to behavioral changes by taxpayers. Policymakers have to balance these factors when considering changes to capital gains tax policy, including the unrealized gains that we're talking about today. In the end, I am not opposed to being taxed. I just want to see it directly impacting people in a positive way. Just look at California spending hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on trying to house homeless people. Guess what? Next to no progress has actually been made with these high taxes and high spending.
The complex and growing problem of homelessness has now become a political football. Advocates say it is a daunting situation with no easy fix.
Tax dollars are often used ineffectively and inefficiently. I'm always nervous to raise new types of taxes when the impact of the overall economy could be uncertain and the funds, at least based on current results of spending, will not be used as effectively as we see in the private marketplace. And really, all that matters in the end is actually benefiting people, not what just feels good, not what just sounds good. All I care about is real world benefits and people actually seeing positive results. There is a lot to consider here, and that's all I wanted to talk about today. I want to give you free money right now. I've partnered with different resources that will literally give you hundreds of dollars the moment you sign up for them. Check out my investing app of choice, Moomoo, where they give you up to 15 free stocks and 8.1% interest on your uninvested cash when you sign up with my link. Do you want a more traditional savings account? Check out where I keep my emergency fund, SoFi, website where they'll give you 4.6% on your money and up to $250 for signing up with my link. Would you rather have automated investing? Sign up for Acorns with my link and you'll get $20 right now instead of the usual $5 you'd get from your friend's referral. You can also sign up for our investing program and get $100 in cash deposited into your Moomoo account. This is the best way to learn what your investing profile looks like and what investing strategies to use based on that. All of this free money is linked in the resources section of the description below, so don't pass up the free money because I'll punch you.